second half of 2018. It will be the third time that Austria has the so-called EU presidency after the accession of Austria to the European Union in 1996. I will first give a few introductory remarks on Austria's foreign policy, especially on with regard to the European Union, a few informations on the institutional setup, and then also on the stance of the government and the population as regards EU integration. And as a second point, I will present the three main pillars the government has lined out as the core issues for the EU presidency. A detailed program has not been published yet. It will be presented on June 6th in Brussels, when the Austrian government holds its weekly meeting, the so-called Ministerrat, the meeting of all ministers of the government in Brussels on the occasion or because of the coming EU presidency. First, a few introductory remarks. As you might know, Austria has had, after World War II, most of the times a so-called Große Koalition, which means a coalition of the Social Democratic Party and the Conservative People's Party, or if one of these parties had more than 50% of the votes, they could reign alone. But in the last 20 years or so, a tendency which can be observed in almost all European countries, that the so-called old big parties lose a massive amount of votes, has also happened in Austria. And now we have three parties which are more or less the same size: the People's Party, the Social Democratic Party, and the Freedom Party. And the ÖVP, the People's Party and the Freedom Party, formed for the second time after the year 2000 a coalition. And as in the year 2000, the now incumbent president Van der Bellen, who ran either on an independent ticket or on the ticket of the Green Party, he was the former head of the Green Party, insisted that in the governmental program a clear commitment to the European Union has to be formulated. The reason is that the Freedom Party, as you might know, is known for its EU skeptic position. This has several reasons. The main reason is that they are not satisfied, or mainly not satisfied, with the policies that come from Brussels, but they have accepted this demand from the president, who, as a side note, is a very weak president. So that's not a very has not a very strong influence on day-to-day politics of the government. The Minister of Foreign Affairs is Karin Kneißl. She has been nominated by the Freedom Party, but she's not a member of the Freedom Party. But the EU issues, and it was probably also a result of the president's urge to not give the Freedom Party too much influence on EU issues. The EU issues lie with Minister Blümel. He's from the People's Party, so he's the federal minister for the European Union. And this ministry resides within the federal chancellery. So it's maybe a shortcut, but one can say that the Chancellor, Sebastian Kurz himself, is the person who forms the Austrian policy towards the European Union, or is the most important person when it comes to Austria's position on EU issues. The Austrian population has voted in 1995 with a 2/3 majority for the accession to the European Union, and in surveys it's more or less plus minus 2/3 who are still in favor of being part of the European Union. So Austria is one of the more skeptic countries in the European Union. On the other hand, there are not many alternatives at the moment. One must also not forget that even within Austria there are very diverse interests when it comes to foreign affairs. I will give just a short point on that. One could speak for hours on that issue, but there has never been a kind of Austrian national idea. So the core identity is given by the Bundesländer, by the provinces. And for example, the westernmost provinces like Vorarlberg and Tyrol, they are not part of Central Europe. They have always oriented themselves towards Switzerland or to South Germany, or in the case of Tyrol, that was always the bridge, for the better or the worse, between Bavaria and northern Italy. And for example, they have not suffered from the threat of the Ottoman Empire. They only suffered indirectly that there were taxes raised in order to finance the wars, but they were not besieged like Vienna 2 times. And of course, Vienna is the easternmost western city in Europe, and so to say the westernmost Central European city, and always the distances from Vienna to Sarajevo, from Vienna even to Warsaw, but from Vienna to Lemberg, these cities are closer than Switzerland, London or Paris respectively. So the war, for example, in Yugoslavia was more or less next door for a Viennese, but not necessarily from a person from Tyrol. But that's just as an important aside. And basically Austria is a very small country. I would say that almost all, or let's say 70, at least 70, if not more, of the Austrian population lie within 100 kilometers to the next border. So being a border region is something which is typical for an Austrian, despite being also not an open border fan. Maybe because of that, because borders also lead to diversity in the true sense of this term. But now to the main to the program of the Austrian government. As I already have mentioned, only a few sketches have been presented yet. And 2 of the 3 topics have been more or less forced on the Austrian government, or so to say forced on the government. The first one is the finalization of the Brexit negotiations, which, if everyone runs according to schedule, should be finished, I think, until October. So this will be a massive undertaking. The second one, not less important, is the debate on the next budget, so to say, of the European Union, or the next multi-annual financial framework after 2020. And we have already seen that there are very diverse interests. On the one hand, with Great Britain, the European Union loses a country which pays more into the budget than receives. So the entire EU budget from the net financing countries will be going down. On the other hand, the Commission wants to have more money, and the receiving countries probably will not be delighted to receive less money. And then there's a third topic, which is a topic of its own choosing. These are the security issues, so to say, and also on 3 layers. The first one is the security and fight against illegal migration, which within the government, of course, is more a topic of the Freedom Party than of the People's Party, even though Sebastian Kurz and other, or the faction within the People's Party of Sebastian Kurz is also addressing this issue very fiercely, but others are within the People's Party not that strongly anti-illegal migration. The second one is securing prosperity and competitiveness through digitalization and stability in the neighborhood. And the third one is also a typical, I would say, Austrian topic, or topic for Vienna, is the rapprochement of the Western Balkans, southeastern Europe to the European Union. As I mentioned, from Vienna to Sarajevo, it's closer than from Vienna to Switzerland, so that's of utmost importance that the Balkan region remains stable. And then there are some minor further topics. On the one hand, the preparatory work for the elections of the European Parliament in May 2019. Then especially Sebastian Kurz has strengthened again and again that the principle of subsidiarity should be strengthened within the European Union, but with many big words. The problem is, what does this mean in reality? One must not forget that Austria is a neutral country, for example, and the common defense policy is not something with which you can win elections in Austria, at least for the time being. So we will see what this means in reality. And then, of course, as Austria is part of this so-called trio, so that 3 countries together have a program for 1.5 years, so the 3 countries having the presidency. Troika. The Troika. In Austria is together with Estonia, who had the presidency last half year. Bulgaria, who is the current, the incumbent presidents in Austria, have 5 topics. I will not outline them now, but this is also something which is a certain given. And to come to an end, and you're most welcome to ask questions then, is that I think for the Austrian government, also because it's relatively new and the media is not really, and many countries, especially Germany and the new old German government, they are not particularly fond of Austria. It will be hard work, tough work, both for the government and the entire support, the member of parliaments, especially for the People's Party. This will be a very difficult situation because there are strong forces within the People's Party being against this coalition. And to a certain extent, the government is somehow forced to succeed, first within the European Union, because if they fail, then of course the position of the entire government will be weakened, but also then within the population. And as the Freedom Party has very close connections to countries like Serbia and Russia, which are not to be on the most lovable countries, on the list of the most lovable countries for many other EU governments, this will be also a tricky issue, and we will see, and that's a typical Austrian expression, we will see what happens. The coming half year will be inspiring or an interesting half year, and maybe a decisive year for the European Union. We'll see in which way things develop. Thanks for your attention.